So we're just going to start in prayer, and then we're going to get into it. So, Lord, we just thank you so much for this day. We thank you for this time together. I thank you for this opportunity to share your word with other ladies that want to dig in and just kind of see things from a whole different perspective, God. Again, we just love you, and I ask you just to use our time together to glorify you and praise you. I pray this all in your son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, and of course now, let me see what Micah's saying. Oh, she says, oh, there she is. Okay. My daughter's like, I'm in the waiting room. Let me in. Okay, so today, like I said, we have got a big one coming in at us, okay? So we are going to be looking at Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. And then it kind of also has the same story, slightly different, but same story again in Mark 7, verses 24 through 30. So if you turn there, you're going to see that it's about the Canaanite woman and her demon-possessed daughter. Now, Michelle, I know you have daughters. Polly, do you have a daughter? You do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, yeah, I think as a mom, Micah, you won't get this from my perspective, but I don't know if you'll remember this time of your life. But this poor woman goes to Jesus and is saying, help me, my daughter is demon possessed. I don't know what to do. And my first thought was, girl, I'm going to guess your daughter's young, like teenager-ish years. And I remember those days. I felt every month that both my daughters, when it got to be that time, were both demon-possessed. So I totally felt her her need and her want from Jesus to help her in this whole situation. Because I do feel like that's still a possibility nowadays. Like, was she like demon possessed? I mean, probably, since it's showing this. But at the same time, like, I was just thinking that, I don't know. I feel like I remember those days when I really did feel like my daughters were demon possessed at least once a month. So I don't know if this was the situation that mom was in, but that's where my mind went right off the bat. So so that was my personal take on this as far as setting this up and going from there. The little funny moment, right? Okay, so again, this is a story not normally told, but one I feel like mothers with daughters, like I just said, can relate to. Some of the background before we read and dig into the verse is the Canaanite woman is a Gentile woman. So, which was from the area of Tyre and Sidon. Modern day, because I like to see where that's at, like today, is like Lebanon along the Mediterranean coast. Tyre is now called Sour, S-O-U-R, and Sidon is now Saida, S-A-I-D-A. I'm thinking I'm pronouncing those right. So if you think of it, it's like even more south than Beirut. So I know Beirut's like a place that we've all heard about at least once or time. And today there are still people living in both of those cities. So it's not something that it's like, oh, it's just in ruins. It's gone. Nobody lives there anymore, like Ephesus. There's still people that live there. So I thought that was really cool. So back to our little story. She was a Gentile. So why does that matter? Well, in those times, it did matter because Jews and Gentiles didn't associate closely. Like, they avoided each other as much as possible, like plague type of avoiding type of thing. Jesus looked at the Gentiles as being sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. Jews looked at the Gentiles as being spiritually unclean. My guess is because they didn't go by over 700 stupid, in my opinion, rules the Pharisees and the Sadducees had set. I mean, it was just crazy how many they kept saying, oh, this is a rule, you can't do this. This is a rule, you can't do this. And it was just their rules. It wasn't something that was literally in the Bible. It was just rules that they would make up. The disciples probably, let's see. Let me see what my notes say. Okay, so the disciples thought that Jesus's mission was probably only Israel focused, like just for people like them, just like for Jews, and that was it. And Jesus kept saying in verse 24, he says, lost sheep. So more or less, they were probably thinking, she's not one of us, right? And then it's like we have boundaries, so cultural and religious boundaries. A Jewish rabbi probably engaging in or publicly engaging with a Gentile woman, like that was totally taboo. They didn't do that. Sorry, I gotta let Michelle back in. They just didn't do that. It was inappropriate, and if you have this woman, like Gentile woman, screaming at them, help me, and she's like screaming, she's not giving up, she's crying out to them, like hashtag awkward, like if type of thing. And it was like culturally totally inappropriate for her to be doing that. Should not have ever been calling out to a rabbi at all. And she was loud, very loud, and she was annoying. It says in verse 22 of that story, she kept crying out. So she was not giving up. She was relentless. She kept it up. Verse 23, the disciples kept saying, send her away, more or less shut her up. Verse 23. There was limited understanding, I believe, on the disciples' part of Jesus's mission. The disciples weren't grasping that Jesus came for everybody. They thought he only came to save them, which were the Jews. But he came for everybody's salvation. Everybody's salvation, not just a certain group of people. Later, Matthew makes it totally clear that the resurrection that the gospel was for all nations. So it's like Matthew kind of like takes it all in. He's just looking at things as like he's there, he's in the moment, but he's also a factual, like writing down the facts type of guy. But they just weren't getting it during this particular moment. They weren't getting that Jesus came for everyone. Like they were just like, oh, we're in the club. This is pretty cool. So it wasn't until the resurrection that Matthew was like, oh my gosh, he, like all of them, like he came for all of us, not just them. So they just weren't understanding that Jesus's mission went way beyond what they were looking at. So so there's a little background. So I wanted to do that background part real quick before we dug into and I wanted to read the verses because I felt like that might help to kind of help us understand and look at this a little bit more. And then we're going to dig into more of like the tidbits and the details of this story. So this is Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. It says, leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. So again, so let's tear this apart a little bit, right? So again, it was a Canaanite woman. We explained why that was such a big thing, okay? And the area that he was in was typically getting ready to be one of those areas that they just avoided. Like, they usually don't go through those. Notice that he didn't say anything. When she was crying out to him, Jesus didn't say anything. I feel like that was like his moment of like kind of testing the disciples a little bit too. Like, I wonder what they're gonna say. Like, he knows, like he doesn't wonder, but you know what I mean? Like, he was just like, let's see how this plays out a little bit, see if they're getting it yet. So I'm going to read like my commentary. Sorry, the camera keeps doing that and I'm not really sure. From my actual Bible, and then I've got two little side stories that were actually in my other Bible that I felt were really super helpful as well. So I'm going to read like kind of all of it, and then I'm going to you guys to kind of pop in on this. The commentary from verse 23 says, puzzled by Jesus' silence, see what I mean? The disciples asked him to get rid of the Gentile woman because she was bothering them with her persistent begging. They showed no compassion for her sensitivity to her needs, but Jesus was not bothered by her at all. He had a purpose in being quiet. It is possible to become so occupied with ministry activities that we become oblivious to the real needs around us. This may be true especially if we look down on people who are in need or who are different from us, or if helping those around us would cause us inconvenience. Instead of being annoyed, be aware of the opportunities that surround you and make an effort to look for ways to minister to those in need. And I loved that. I love that it was just like pointing out, like, we need to look around. One of the things I used to say to, I can't remember if I said it to Micah and Sam. I mean, I probably did, but I feel like I use it a lot more with Corbin, and it's just because of the generation that he's in versus they were in. They were still in that generation where they played outside. They wanted to play outside more. I remember my girls taking their blankets and dolls and all that stuff, and they would just like have a little heyday outside, you know, pretending to play house and stuff like that. And it's more of a struggle for him, and I feel like sometimes he asks me to help him do things that I'm just like, you can do this, right? So one of my sayings that I love to use on him, and you guys can totally steal this, is I'm going to help you by not helping you. Because it just feels like kids nowadays are not grasping like problem solving skills, because everything's so instant on their that they do at school. They use so many tablets times at schools that they are just not using their brains to figure things out. So if you would like to use that line and implement it at your house, go right ahead. Okay, so the big picture. The woman shows she's not giving up, and she shows her humble faith. She gets it. Remember, the disciples were not getting it. And Jesus even praises her faith. Woman, you have great faith in verse 28. And then her daughter is healed because of her faith. And it says in several times in other stories, can't remember the addresses off the top of my head, but it does say in several times, by your friend's faith or by someone else's faith, Jesus would heal other people. And I just thought that was awesome. So it means like if we have people in our lives that are just not getting it, we can continue to pray for them from the outside. And because of our faith, God is still faithful and he will still heal them. And I just love that he keeps reminding us of that through all these stories. It's also foreshadowing to the inclusion of the Gentiles. That's us in God's redemptive plan. Like he just kept saying like, oh, just hold on. Like this isn't just for you guys. This is not just for a certain group of people. I came to save the world. I love that the disciples were just like, shut her up. Like, shut her up. And we discussed those a few points earlier of like why they could have been that. And Jesus didn't. This is the other thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out to you guys. That from the disciples' perspective, she was annoying. She was totally bothering them. It was just, she was getting on their nerves, right? And now Jesus, he wasn't bothered by her at all. He was welcoming her to come in. He could have told her to go away too, but you notice that he wasn't. He was compassionate. He was welcoming. He was loving. And so I guess this is where like my brain kind of starts going a little like, what? Like, I don't get it. So sometimes my brain goes like, why? If they were so bothered by it, why do some traditions, and I say traditions, you'll get the idea here in a second. Why do some other groups of people, traditions, go to saints, right? So that's the disciples. That's Saint Peter, Saint Michael, or Saint Michael, Saint Matthew. You know what I mean? So because they don't want to bother Jesus, and this is just like one of those things where I'm just like, it's, some people are still not getting it, is how I feel, and it's just my opinion that it just makes me go like, it makes my heart hurt for those, because it's like, even now some of these people are not getting that they're not bothering Jesus by going directly to him. He wants us to go to him. So I guess that's where I'm just like, okay, the disciples in this story were the ones that were getting annoyed, but yet some traditions are told, go to all these other apostles, his mom, all this other stuff before you go to him, because you don't want to bother him. And this story even specifically points out that he's not bothered by this woman at all. So that means we can go to Jesus anytime we want, and we're not bothering him. He wants us to go directly to him. He wants to have that relationship with us. And I just love that. So the other thing is, we have to remember that we're also guilty of being bothered, right? Just like the disciples. Instead of being annoyed, we should be looking around, like that commentary said, about other opportunities to serve other people. Even the annoying ones, like our kids. Sometimes our kids are the ones that will just be the most annoying, I feel like, and especially depending on which season of life our kids are in. I know Micah's in the 4-year-old stage, right? Where it's just like they're starting to realize they have a voice and they talk back, and they're starting to realize that. So it's like, I remember saying, okay, like, that's not how we talk. Like, you're not going to talk to me like that. And starting to put those boundaries in. So that's when it has to start. It has to start early. You guys, it's not something that we should let it go until it gets to be where they're 16. And then you're trying to put the boundaries in, is it's not going to go well. But again, that's where that situation, I'm going to help you by not helping you, because it also teaches them independence and confidence. So you are helping them. It's just that you're not helping them in the way that they think you should be helping them. And I feel like Jesus does that a lot with us, where we're like crying out to him, like, help me. And we already have a plan in mind on how we want this to go. And he's like, that's not how I want it to go. And so again, it's just like Jesus reminds us so much, like down here, of how he is through us, and just using moments like that. And I don't know. I just feel like I feel so much closer when I pick out those moments like that. Okay, so we're going to kind of move on to the part of the breadcrumbs. Remember how he was like saying that the dogs crumbs, remember that he was like saying, and she was like, yes they do. So back then, the thing with, if you would say a person is a dog, that meant that was a bad thing. That was an insult, because they were like scavengers. But that's not how Jesus was using that that analogy, this illustration for this purpose. He was saying, it's like if your dog is sitting next to you at the table as a pet, okay, and you are like, something falls on the floor. Like, we all have crumbs of food that fall on the floor, and those dogs are like gobbling them up, right? So he wasn't being mean when he was saying that at all. And he was telling her that the Jews were the first to have the opportunity for what he was giving. Okay, so he was more or less saying, like, think of it as, I was thinking it of a Last Supper. Like, the Jews sat with him at the Last Supper, right? They sat at a table with him. It even says a table type of thing. And they were like given the first opportunity to accept him as the Messiah. And notice that a lot of them didn't. A lot of them did not. It was like he was giving them wanted to present the message of salvation to all the people of the nations. And she was like, okay, I get that. Like, I understand what you're putting down here. I get it. And he wasn't rejecting her. He could have been testing her, or he could have been using this as another teaching opportunity to his disciples, that faith is available to everyone. Yeah, everyone, like, including demon-possessed daughters. In verse 26, it says, it kind of comes across as harsh. maybe a little bit, but Jesus was using the crumbs to a dog like a household pet, like I just said. Not a scroungy dog on the streets like what they were thinking. And notice she wasn't offended by it either. She was just like, okay. She agreed with him with it, right? She's like, I get it. I'm okay with that. As long as I am still, as long as you'll heal my daughter, I don't care what you call me. You know? And I was just like, that's amazing. Like, because so many people are easily offended nowadays that they're not getting the big picture. And she recognized there was plenty of salvation from God. Even in the crumbs, she noticed there was plenty of that for her and for her daughter. So it's funny how we got through I can't talk. So, like I said, when you're thinking of stuff, you have to think too that you have to have faith in the crumbs that God gives us too. Like, it may not be the whole meal, but he's still our master. He's still the master of the house, and he's still going to take care of us, even if it's kind of like doing little table scraps to us sometimes. Sometimes that's all we need. And I feel like we forget that as well. So this story reminded me of that as well. And it's funny how even though God's chosen people still didn't recognize him, the outsiders totally do. So I don't know. So I want you guys just to remember too that when you feel like an outsider, you can remember that as long as you have faith, the crumbs can be enough from that table, just like her humility and that type of thing. I was going to read, let's see, do we have enough time? Yeah. Okay, so I was going to read, I didn't realize that my little extra Bible here had, where did it go? I thought I marked it. Okay, 1811. Oh, I did with my fancy bookmark. So the Women of Faith Bible, remember I was like telling you guys about this one that I got in the auction that was like God saying, okay, you're going to do this. They kind of gave like another little story, a backstory to this story, and like a different perspective as well that I did pull some bits from, but I even have in my notes like read this because it's like super good. Okay, so this is titled A Tenacious Faith. And it says, she called him Lord. Who was she kidding? She was a Gentile. The disciples wished she would get lost. Jesus did not want anyone to know he was here, and she was ruining it all. They pleaded with him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. Matthew 15:23. Things did not seem to be going well for Jesus lately. Herod had beheaded John the Baptist. The Pharisees had plotted to kill Jesus. His own hometown was offended by his teaching, and his disciples were spiritually thick-headed. The resistance to his ministry grew rapidly, and Jesus needed time to think and pray. He had come from Galilee to be alone with his disciples. Perhaps here the Father might show him the answers he needed in the face of persecution. But first, he must handle this new crisis for the disciples. I love that. Must handle it for them. As he turned to answer her, Jesus saw something in the woman's face. This Gentile was not going to give up. She believed in him. Perhaps Jesus thought aloud as he tested her, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. He's testing her, are you one of these lost sheep? Thinking he might refuse her, she came close and knelt at Jesus' feet, again begging for mercy. She had no claim on Israel's Messiah. Nonetheless, only God could grant her mercy and deliver her daughter from demons. She did not even flinch when Jesus said she was robbing Israel's provision. She knew that Jesus was the answer. Jesus did not have to give her the whole package. Even the crumbs would satisfy her. When Jesus saw her faith, her tenacity, and her humility, he was amazed. She was not the first Gentile woman that Jesus healed, and she certainly would not be the last. Faith is a powerful force. It changes things. It provides a way when there is no way, an answer when there is no answer. It turns no into yes. Faith touches God. It is a gift of the Spirit and a sign to unbelievers. We pray for faith when we have none, and we keep asking until God answers. Isn't that awesome? Like, I don't know. I was like, I didn't even know that was there. Like, that wasn't part of my spiel today. But then when I was looking and stuff, I was like, it says in this other little bit in my Bible, it says go to this page, and it was like 200 pages later. And then when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to share that with you guys, because it is like just awesome, you know. And I want us to remember too that when we're praying, it was a loud truck, wasn't it? When we're praying, that sometimes God's answer, when we want it to be yes, He answers with a no. He could have chosen to say no because He was going to use her daughter in a different way later on, or He was going to use her in a different way later on. So I think that helped me at least remember that sometimes God doesn't always answer the way we want Him to answer. In this situation, He totally answered her the way she was hoping He was going to, which was just hope, right? It was just, I know if I can get to Him, things are going to be better. He can make them better. Only He can do it. And I just love that, because sometimes it was a good reminder to me too that sometimes the stuff that I want to control and don't feel like justice is being served, it can take years. In some situations it really does take years, and it takes my faith and our faith in general in Him to know He sees all, He knows all, and He will take care of it on our behalf. Well, all we have to do is keep praying for the situation, even for that person. Remember how it was telling us about the annoying ones, like even the annoying people, to keep praying for them and ask for blessings and ask God to help them and stuff like that. That's gotten me like back into that